March is officially over for 2023. I survived it, and if you're listening to this, you must have survived it also. The last week of March was the 13th week of the year. It was pretty relaxing for me. Only had to go to town one day last week, whereas the week before I had been to town 3 different days during the week. So that made getting all of my at-home work a little more intense, getting all that done. But this past week, I had all 6 days to get everything done. So that was much less stressful, much more pleasant for me and for everyone else. I did a lot of transplanting this past week, seed starting. The seeds that I started were the tomatoes, peppers, basil, calendula. I purposely planted my tomatoes and peppers and such a couple weeks later this year than I usually do because I didn't want to have any plants that were stressed prior to transplanting. I finally admitted I just have to wait until May to transplant, and I didn't want any plants that were more than 6 weeks old at the most when I transplanted. I didn't want to have to up pot the plants if they were older and they needed more root space. And I didn't want to leave plants in pots and have them start going to flower while they were in pots because the plant's usually pretty stressed then and it won't do as well when you transplant it. So I'm okay with having a slightly smaller plant when I transplant it in early May, first or second week. And also not having my greenhouse be overcrowded with large plants for the nights that they will still need protection between now and May. It truly is a test of self-discipline and also remembering the lessons from the past, because by the time the end of April comes, the weather's so pretty and I always want to transplant out, and I usually do, and the plants just suffer because it's just not quite warm enough, or a surprise cold night comes and the tomato plants are damaged. And since they are the golden crown in the garden, I want my plants to do really well this year. They've suffered the last couple of years, so I am really going to stick to it. You hold me to it. If you see me transplanting those tomatoes in April, you can say, shame on you. We harvested just about all of our kale this week because it was starting to go to seed. So the main big bed of kale that I had, this is how much we collected off of it, these 3 big bowls. And I'd spread them all out over 8 different trays to go in 2 different dehydrators. And we dehydrated them down 24 hours or so. And then I turned them into powder a few days later. And this is how much kale powder I got from those 8 trays from the dehydrators. And then I also had way more spinach than I needed because my freezers were full. My fridge has plenty. And so I dehydrated some spinach also and then added that in to one of the jars so that it's going to be like some mixed greens. Just great powder for smoothies, adding into soups, stews, lasagnas. Even I added into the sauce for pizza because nobody knows it's there. You still get the nutrition. I also had 2 different friends come this week and get all the spinach they wanted. One of them left with a pretty good sized cooler loaded to the top. She couldn't even close the lid. She had so much spinach. And I still have some out there to get. A good portion of the Bloomsdale Longstanding I am going to leave to go to seed, but there's still a little bit more I can harvest for fresh eating for the next couple weeks. But then the spinach and kale were done from overwinter. And I do have new baby spinach and baby kale planted in case spring stays cool enough for me to get a good harvest between April and May. Since the days are getting longer and warmer, it's time to start mowing grass and weed eating, at least inside the garden. I did mowed first so that I knew just how much I couldn't reach with the mower. And then I did the weed eating, both with the Ego electric mower and weed eater. And I'm loving both of them. There's no gas to smell or pour. I just charge the batteries, which is all on solar, and they do a great job. This was the only sad part of the week when it came to getting the mower and the weed eater down. So a bird terrifies me when I come out to grab my weed eater and flies away. And as I'm grabbing my weed eater, I hear something fall and drop. So there's the nest. And there's the broken egg. All right, someone let the birds know building nests in weed eaters is not smart. Okay, I tucked the nest back up here in case the birdie wants to come back. I know it's a lot of work making those nests, so she can come back. It's been 3 days and I checked the nest and there's still no activity there. So I guess that mommy bird's not coming back. I'm pretty sure it was a mourning dove. We have lots of mourning doves around, so we won't lack any new babies this year. But all of the birds are active, of course, because it's spring. The bluebirds are constantly chirping and chiming. Oh, and they also attack my back door every year now. We named the bluebirds, we call them the Wacky family. The dad is Mr. Wacky, and we think he has trained his sons and all these new generations we've had the last few years to attack our back door. But he lands absolutely everywhere, of course, anywhere glass, anywhere mirrors. Something to do with being protective of their areas, and they just poop everywhere. But we love the bluebirds. They are our best friends. We never have tomato hornworms anymore since we've had bluebirds move into our garden. And speaking of birds, we have started the incubator for the first batch this year. My kids have been selling baby chickens the last 2 summers, and this year they're going to be doing even more because we anticipate lots more people wanting baby chickens locally. So we did some candling this week. We've got 10 to 12 from this batch that look like they're going to be good, and they should be hatching this coming week. And we're also starting our larger incubator as well this week. All of the chicken pens were restocked this week with wood chips. We try to do that at least twice a year for multiple reasons. And this is my comfrey patch. I started with 6 or 7 plants several years ago. And this is, I would guesstimate 300, maybe 400 feet away from my garden. You don't want to have flowering comfrey anywhere near where your garden is because it will spread and take over, which I wanted it to do. I wanted to give it a space to spread out because I use comfrey for a lot of things. And that patch will only fill in as the warm weather continues, and it'll be completely green by the time midsummer comes. So I just want to take a peek in the chicken house. I could show you around more of it later. It's not that amazing. It's just a chicken house. One of the things that we found necessary was because people were often getting themselves locked in the pen or locked in the house was this Little House on the Prairie style lock that you could open from the inside. This way the kids can lock the door behind them while they're in with the chickens and they don't have any escapees. And then they can easily open the door just by pulling the string, and that releases the lock on the outside when they want to go out. This side of the chicken house has all the Australorp chickens. We are keeping them segregated while we are collecting eggs for hatching. And this side has our Rhode Island Red rooster with all of the hens that have either full or partial Rhode Island Red in them. And a little beyond that is the small hatchery my husband made this year where the baby chicks are going to go. Right now we just have 2 hens isolated in there. And this little thing, if you have not seen a grandpa feeder before, I think that's what they're called, grandpa feeders. You train the chickens over a few weeks, but eventually they learn. They step on this pedal. I'm going to step on it, and it lifts the feeding tray door open. So they step on it, they can eat the chicken food they want, and when they walk away, the food's covered back up, and you can't have rain getting into it or rodents taking advantage of the chicken food. Looking over my March calendar, there were a total of 12 days in the month that involved seed starting or planting or transplanting some kind of crop or seed. And here is a little update on the potatoes that I started February 24th. So this is wall bed 1, where I started potatoes super early for this area. Usually around mid-March, March 15th is when you would start potatoes in the ground for zone 7. We're in 7A. And I put these in the ground February 24th, or in the wall, because I know my walls are warmer than the ground soil to begin with. And also the potatoes were getting soft and had really big eyes on them because they had been in storage all winter. And I just wanted to put them in the ground and see if they would grow. And
That was February 24th. And I checked this past Sunday and I found 11 sprouts coming up. And today, March 31st, I counted a total of 31. And I planted 48 here. And I planted them kind of close together, assuming most wouldn't come up. But I am super excited. It really changes your planting dynamic when you have raised beds, especially these with the block. It retains heat a lot more. But I do know that anytime we are going to get below freezing, I would have to put my mini hoops up and cover these plants to protect the leaves. But it looks like we're going to have a warm spring. If the forecast can be trusted, we shouldn't have any more freezing nights at all for 2023.
Those were the highlights of last week's homesteading activities. It's nice that the seasons are starting to change and we're starting to have a little more variety and much more opportunities for outdoor work. In the next week or two, I will probably just do a full garden tour walk around and see the status of each bed and what's growing and what I will be planting, and maybe still harvesting a little bit of too during April. I hope your next week is sunny and pleasant and calm. If you start to feel anxiety creeping in, just remember to breathe deeply and to choose to live joyfully.